The ultrasound slid out of my husband's desk and landed face up on the hardwood while I was looking for the fertility clinic statement that had kept us in debt for 7 years. In the lower corner was the name of my best friend, Megan Rowe. On the back, in Daniel's unmistakable block handwriting, were 5 words that stopped my heart: "Our miracle finally came home." For several seconds, I could hear everything in our house except myself. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. A landscaping crew rattled past our street in Lakewood. Somewhere upstairs, the dryer finished its cycle and played the cheerful little melody I had always found annoying. I stood beside Daniel's walnut desk holding a gray image of a child who was not mine, and the ordinary sounds of our life kept going as if nothing had broken. I was 42, a Mexican-American raised in Garland, and directed talent strategy for an aerospace manufacturer in Plano. Every week I interviewed executives who had rehearsed perfect answers, reviewed investigations involving people who had hidden harassment or theft behind polished resumes, and taught managers how to notice when words and behavior did not match. I had built a career on reading people. Yet the man who slept beside me had apparently constructed an entire second life within arm's reach, and I had never seen the door. I turned the image over again. The scan date was 12 days earlier. The clinic was in Frisco, nowhere near Megan's apartment or Daniel's office. A printed gestational age placed the pregnancy at almost 15 weeks. The arithmetic felt obscene. I began counting backward, matching weeks to dinners, business trips, physical therapy appointments, and the nights Daniel had held me while I cried over the life we had stopped trying to create. Daniel and I had met at a charity 5K sponsored by his accounting firm. I had laughed when he admitted he hated running and had joined only because a partner promised to notice the employees who participated. He was 34 then, serious in a way that made his dry humor feel like a secret reward. He remembered my coffee order after hearing it once. When my father had a minor stroke during our second year together, Daniel drove from Dallas to Baylor Scott and White before I could even call him. He sat with my mother, found the insurance forms, and made himself useful without needing to be praised. People envied me when we married. Daniel had just made senior manager at Wexler and Pierce, a respected regional accounting firm. He was steady, gentle with my parents, careful with money, and ambitious without seeming cruel. I had recently been promoted, and together we bought the Lakewood house with its white brick exterior, deep front porch, and small upstairs room we quietly imagined as a nursery. For the first 2 years, we told ourselves there was no hurry. Then came the calendars, ovulation tests, and cheerful advice from relatives who assumed biology was a matter of relaxation. Testing showed that my endometriosis had scarred more than anyone realized. Daniel's results revealed low sperm concentration and poor motility. The doctors spoke in percentages. We heard verdicts. Over the next 5 years, our marriage became organized around appointments. I injected hormones in airport bathrooms before work conferences. Daniel drove samples through morning traffic. We learned the difference between hope that felt careful and hope that felt reckless. We paid for 4 procedures, 2 egg retrieval cycles, and medication our insurance called elective. I had surgery to remove cysts after my ovaries overreacted to treatment. I became pregnant twice. The first pregnancy lasted 9 weeks. The second lasted 12. After the second loss, I woke in a recovery room with Daniel's hand around mine and a nurse speaking softly about discharge instructions. I remember staring at the ceiling tiles and wondering how grief could be so large when the person I mourned had never taken a breath. Daniel cried in the parking garage. He pressed his face against my hair and promised we would survive it together. Months later, after another specialist recommended a more aggressive protocol, I told Daniel I could not make my body a laboratory again. He sat beside me on the living room floor because I had not made it to the couch. "Then we stop," he said. "We can be happy, just you and me. I don't need anything else." I asked him twice if he meant it. "I mean, you are my family," he said. "Not a consolation prize." My family. I built the next 2 years around believing him. We traveled to Santa Fe. We turned the upstairs room into a shared office. I stopped attending every baby shower out of obligation and learned to say I was busy without apologizing. Most days I felt whole. Some days a toddler laughing in a grocery aisle could split me open without warning. Daniel seemed to understand. He would squeeze my hand and change the subject before anyone could ask whether we had considered other options. Megan knew every detail. We had been friends since 10th grade at a public high school in Garland. She was the kind of girl who could enter a cafeteria late and still make everyone look up. Beautiful, funny, impulsive, and constantly hungry for proof that she mattered, she collected attention the way some people collected shoes. At 20, she married a musician after knowing him for 4 months. They had a son, moved to Tulsa, separated, reconciled, and separated again. By the time she returned to Dallas, her son was 16 and had chosen to remain with his father to finish high school. Our old friends judged her. Some said a mother who left her son in another state had revealed everything anyone needed to know. I defended her. He has a school, a team, and a stable home there, I told them. She made mistakes. That doesn't mean she should be abandoned forever. Megan cried when I helped her move into a 1-bedroom apartment in Richardson. She said I was the only person who still believed she could begin again. I helped rewrite her resume and practiced interview questions with her until she landed a job as an aide at a physical therapy clinic. When she could not afford a deposit for furniture, I gave her the money and refused repayment. That was who I had been to her. Daniel's back began bothering him during tax season. He spent 12-hour days hunched over laptops and complained of pain shooting into his hip. Megan said her clinic had a cancellation and could get him evaluated quickly. I sent his insurance details myself. Take good care of my husband, I joked when I introduced them in the clinic lobby. Megan rested a hand over her heart. I'll return him better than new. Standing in his office with her ultrasound in my hand, I remembered all 3 of us laughing. Daniel arrived shortly after 6 o'clock that evening. He called my name from the hallway, set his keys in the ceramic bowl, and began describing a client meeting before he reached the office door. Then he saw what I was holding. His face emptied. I had conducted enough workplace interviews to recognize the moment a person abandoned denial and began calculating damage. His eyes went to the open drawer, then to the ultrasound, then to me. He loosened his tie even though the house was cool. Claire, he said, let me explain. Start with why my best friend's ultrasound was hidden under your retirement statements. He took 1 step toward me. I stepped back. Megan asked me a tax question. She must have left it with some papers. Do you prepare tax returns on fetal ultrasounds now? That isn't what I meant. Then tell me what you meant. And explain the note on the back. He closed his eyes. The color had drained from his mouth. For an absurd instant I wanted him to produce an explanation I could believe. I wanted him to say the handwriting was forged, the clinic had made an error, Megan had played some sick joke. I wanted the last 7 years to rearrange themselves into something that did not make me feel foolish. Daniel lowered himself into the desk chair. The baby is mine. The sentence was quiet. It still struck with enough force to make me grip the desk. How long? It wasn't planned. How long have you been sleeping with her? We started having lunch after her clinic sessions. She understood what we had been through. She listened. I lived what we had been through. I know. No. You know the appointments. You know the bills. You did not wake up bleeding. You did not sign surgical consent while wondering whether the operation would make the next attempt impossible. You did not have people look at you as if your body had failed a moral test. He stared at the floor. It happened a few times, he said. Then she told me she was pregnant. And you believed the baby was yours even after every doctor told us your chances were low. His head came up. Low isn't 0. The hope in his voice hurt more than the confession. He had not sounded that alive in years. Did you ask for proof? She hasn't been with anyone else. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because his certainty sounded borrowed from a man I no longer recognized. You wrote our miracle. After everything we went through, I can't abandon my child. But you can abandon me. I didn't say that. You already chose. You made her pregnancy a miracle and our marriage a problem you needed to manage. He stood and reached for me. Claire, please. I never wanted to hurt you. You wanted what you wanted. My pain was simply a cost you decided I could absorb. He began crying then. I had seen those tears after our losses, and the resemblance made me nauseated. He said he loved me. He said he had been confused. He said Megan had made him feel hopeful again. Every explanation centered his hunger, his fear, his imagined child. Not one sentence centered what he had done to me. I called Megan while he was still speaking. She answered on the fourth ring with a bright "Hey, you," as if we were still women who trusted each other. I'm holding your ultrasound. Silence. Daniel says the baby is his. The call ended. When I tried again, it went directly to voicemail. Daniel looked alarmed. Don't go after her. Stress isn't good for the baby. I stared at him until he understood what he had said. You watched me lose 2 pregnancies, I whispered, and your first instinct is to protect her from my voice. I took my purse and keys. Daniel followed me to the front door, asking where I was going. I said I needed space. I did not tell him that beneath the shock, the part of my mind trained to investigate had already started listing inconsistencies. Megan had ignored several calls lately. She had stopped drinking at dinner but blamed antibiotics. Daniel's unexplained client meetings had increased. None of that proved anything new. Yet one detail would not leave me alone: he had accepted paternity without a test even though his fertility diagnosis had shaped our lives. I spent the night at a hotel near White Rock Lake. I did not call my parents because I could not bear to hear their pain. I made 3 lists on hotel stationery: what I knew, what Daniel claimed, and what I needed to protect. Under protect, I wrote house, accounts, medical records, job, dignity. Then I crossed out dignity. No one else could take that unless I surrendered it. At 8:15 the next morning, I drove to Megan's apartment. I knocked until footsteps approached. The man who opened the door was about 36, broad-shouldered, barefoot, and wearing a t-shirt with the logo of Grant Family Butcher and Smokehouse. He looked as if he had just awakened. Can I help you? I'm looking for Megan. He glanced behind him. She left for work early. I'm Lucas. Her boyfriend. For a second I thought I had misunderstood the word. Her what? He smiled uncertainly. Boyfriend. We've been together almost 8 months. I'm here most nights. The hallway seemed to tilt the same way Daniel's office had tilted. Lucas noticed my expression and opened the door wider. Are you okay? I'm Claire. Megan's friend. Recognition appeared. Claire from high school? She talks about you. I wondered which version of me she had described. The generous friend? The infertile wife? The obstacle whose husband offered a better future? Lucas invited me inside. His work boots were near the couch. A men's shaving kit sat open beside the bathroom sink. Framed snapshots showed him and Megan at a Rangers game, at a family barbecue, on a hiking trail near Turner Falls. In one photograph, she wore the same yellow sweater she had worn to my house for Thanksgiving. I thought something was wrong, he said. She's been distant. Is this about her pregnancy? I looked at him. He walked to a kitchen drawer and removed a folded sheet of paper. It was another copy of the ultrasound. I found this last week, he said. She hasn't officially told me, but I think she's planning some kind of surprise. We've talked about having a family. Do you know how far along she is? His face held the same raw hope I had heard in Daniel's voice. Megan had given each man a different path toward the same imagined future. The difference was that Lucas did not know Daniel existed. I could have told him everything. I could have called Daniel from the kitchen and watched the lie explode before breakfast. But a faster part of me saw the risk. If I exposed the doubt immediately, Daniel would stop cooperating. Megan would delete messages. They might turn their shame into a shared defense and fight me over every dollar. I had spent years in rooms where people mistook an emotional reaction for a strategy. I would not make that mistake with my own life. Maybe she is planning a surprise, I said carefully. Don't tell her I came. Go with her to the next appointment if you can. Lucas's smile faded. Why are you here? Because Megan stopped answering me, and I was worried. It was not the whole truth, but it was enough to leave without setting fire to evidence I might need. In my car, I finally cried. Not the helpless, gasping grief I had felt the night before. These tears came with clarity. Daniel was not the only possible father. Megan had been living with one man while telling another that his unlikely conception was a miracle. I did not yet know whose child she carried. I knew she had lied to both of them. And for the first time since the ultrasound hit the floor, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. Daniel was pacing the living room when I returned. His suit jacket lay across a chair, and his tie was gone. He looked exhausted enough to invite sympathy from anyone who did not know he had spent the night protecting the consequences of his own choices. Did you go to Megan's apartment? He asked. I set my purse on the counter. Why? She called me. Someone was knocking early, and she was afraid it might be you. That told me she had not spoken to Lucas after he let me inside. It also told me she was monitoring both lives carefully. If she is afraid of me asking questions, I said, she should not have slept with my husband. She's pregnant, Claire. I don't want you upsetting her. Something inside me went still. For 7 years, Daniel had watched nurses search for veins in my arms. He had sat beside me while an ultrasound technician stopped speaking because no heartbeat remained. Yet after less than 24 hours, he had reassigned tenderness to the woman who helped cause my pain. I want a divorce. He stopped pacing. I expected protest, panic, maybe the declaration of love he had offered the night before. Instead, relief passed across his face before he could hide it. We shouldn't decide anything while we're emotional. I'm not deciding. I'm informing you. He pressed his fingertips against his temples. I'll agree to reasonable terms. I just don't want this turning into some public scandal that damages my career. There it was, his first clear priority. Not our marriage. Not an apology. Reputation. Then keep your schedule open for mediation, I said. I packed enough clothes for a week and left before he could ask where I would stay. I checked into the same hotel, changed every password Daniel might know, downloaded account statements, photographed the contents of our home office, and froze the joint home equity line so neither of us could draw from it alone. I did not empty accounts or hide money. I simply preserved the shape of our financial life before anyone could distort it. By noon, I was sitting across from Priya Shah, a family law attorney recommended by our company's general counsel. Priya had kind eyes and the unnerving patience of someone who knew silence made people reveal more than questions did. She listened while I described the affair, the pregnancy, the ultrasound, and the unknown boyfriend. I showed her photographs of the note and scan but did not hand over the original. Does your husband know there may be another father? She asked. No. Are you certain there is another relationship? I met the man in her apartment. His belongings are there. He has photographs spanning months and his own copy of the scan. Priya leaned back. Paternity and your divorce are separate legal matters. Don't threaten anyone, don't impersonate anyone, and don't access accounts or devices that aren't yours. But you are not required to volunteer information to your husband while we negotiate. He made a decision based on what he chose to believe. Am I cruel for letting him keep believing it? That's a moral question, not a legal one. Legally, your job is to tell the truth when required and protect yourself within the rules. Morally, I would ask why you feel responsible for rescuing the man who lied to you from another liar. That question followed me for weeks. Texas required a waiting period before a divorce could be finalized, but Daniel wanted speed and discretion. He moved into a furnished apartment near uptown, telling colleagues our separation was mutual. Megan stayed out of sight. He retained a lawyer from a firm that often referred business to Wexler and Pierce and arrived at mediation with the confidence of a man who believed urgency gave him leverage. Our property was mostly community property, the Lakewood house, investment accounts, vehicles, and retirement contributions from the marriage. We also owned a small parcel near Cedar Creek Lake that Daniel had once imagined developing. The fertility debt had been paid down but not erased. Daniel proposed selling the house, splitting the equity, and dividing most accounts evenly. He called it generous. Priya slid our counterproposal across the table. I would keep the house and assume the mortgage. Daniel would transfer enough of the taxable investment account to balance part of the equity, accept a qualified division of retirement funds, and take responsibility for the remaining fertility loan because he had recently received a large performance bonus. We would sell the land. Both parties would sign a confidentiality clause limited to financial and private medical details, not a gag order covering unlawful conduct. Each would waive maintenance after the asset division. Daniel stared at the numbers. She's asking for more than half. She is assuming a mortgage, giving up claims that could prolong discovery, and offering a fast, private resolution, Priya replied. Your client is the one insisting on speed. His lawyer requested a private discussion. Through the conference room glass, I watched Daniel talking rapidly, tapping the paper, and checking his phone. I knew he was calculating the cost of delay against the future he wanted to begin. When he returned, he agreed to nearly everything except the land allocation. We negotiated for 4 more hours. By evening, the settlement gave me the house, a larger portion of the liquid savings, an offset for medical expenses, and a fair retirement division. It was not revenge. It was a defensible agreement reached because Daniel valued haste more than leverage. As he signed, he looked at me with resentment. You're getting more than you deserve. No, I said. You're paying the price you set for leaving quickly. The decree could not be entered that day, but the mediated agreement was binding. Daniel walked out believing he had purchased a clean exit. He thought he would keep his career, marry a younger woman, and become the father our marriage had failed to make him. He did not know the future he was financing still had 2 possible fathers. I moved back into the house after he removed his belongings. The first night alone, I sat on the kitchen floor and listened to the silence. Victory did not feel triumphant. I had kept the place where we had planned our lives, but every room carried an echo. The upstairs office still had small dents in the wall from shelves Daniel installed when it was going to be a nursery. In our bedroom closet, one empty row of hangers looked like missing teeth. I began therapy with a counselor named Dr. Elaine Foster. At our first session, I told her I felt embarrassed that I had not discovered the affair earlier. Would you blame an employee for failing to detect a fraud committed by someone who had access, opportunity, and years to learn the system? She asked. No. Then why is trust evidence of your incompetence when it happens at home? I had no answer. Meanwhile, Megan was dismantling her other relationship. Lucas texted me from a number he said she did not know I had. His message was simple: she says she lost the baby. Is that true? I stared at the words until anger tightened my throat. A pregnancy loss had nearly destroyed me twice. Megan was using that grief as an exit line. I called him from my office with the door closed. When did she tell you? Last night. She cried but wouldn't let me come over. She said the doctor confirmed there was no heartbeat and she needed to be alone. Did she send medical paperwork? No. Why? I could hear machinery humming through the wall of his family shop. Lucas, I need to tell you something. Megan is still pregnant. The other possible father is my husband. The silence lasted so long I checked the screen to see whether the call had ended. Your husband, he finally said. They met through her clinic. He believes the child is his. I found the ultrasound in his desk. Lucas swore, then apologized automatically, then swore again. He asked whether I was certain. I told him only what I knew and made the uncertainty clear. Daniel and I tried to have a child for 7 years, I said. His odds were low, not impossible. I don't know who the father is. I know Megan was with both of you, and she lied about the pregnancy ending. I'm going over there. Don't. She told me my baby died. I understand why you're angry, but do not threaten her, touch her, or give her a reason to make you the villain. Save every message. Save photographs, receipts, and voicemails. Talk to a lawyer about what you can do after the child is born. If you want the truth, arrive with evidence, not rage. My professional voice had returned. Lucas breathed heavily but listened. Why didn't you tell me when you came to the apartment? Because my husband had already betrayed me. I needed to protect myself before I warned him that his fantasy might collapse. You used me. The accusation was fair enough to hurt. I delayed telling you for 5 weeks, I said. You have every right to be angry about that. But I did not create the lie, and I'm telling you now because she said your child was dead when the child is alive. He ended the call without saying goodbye. For the next 3 days, I wondered whether I had become like the people I judged. I had withheld a truth because it gave me leverage. The difference between strategy and manipulation felt thinner when I was the beneficiary. Dr. Foster did not excuse me. You made a choice under threat, she said. Own it without turning it into your identity. The test of character is what you do after the threat passes. On the 4th day, Lucas called again. His voice was controlled. I spoke to an attorney. He said a court can establish paternity after birth, and there may be options before then, but he doesn't want me confronting her. I found something you should hear. He played a voice message Megan had sent 3 days before ending their relationship. Her voice was tender and nervous. The doctor says conception probably happened during our weekend in Austin. I'm scared to say it out loud yet, but I think we're going to be parents. Please don't tell your mother until I'm ready. Lucas and Megan had gone to Austin for a food festival. Photographs and hotel receipts fixed the dates. Daniel had been in Denver that weekend for a client project. The timing did not prove Lucas was the father, estimated conception windows could vary. It proved Megan had known the doubt existed and had told each man a version designed around what he wanted. I'm sending you a copy, Lucas said. Not to post. Just so someone else has it. Thank you. I still don't like that you waited. You don't have to. But you were right about evidence. That was the first meaningful turn in the story, though none of us understood yet how far the recording would travel. The divorce became final after the required waiting period. At the prove-up hearing, Daniel stated under oath that the marriage had become insupportable and that the settlement was voluntary. In written discovery, his lawyer had explained his urgency by saying Daniel intended to form a household with the woman carrying a child he acknowledged as his. The statement did not make him the legal father, but it documented how thoroughly he had committed to the claim without verification. Outside the courthouse, he caught up with me near the elevators. I hope someday you understand this wasn't about replacing you. Then what was it about? A chance I never thought I would have. You keep describing a baby as your chance. Megan is a person, the child is a person, and I was your wife. None of us existed to solve your disappointment. He looked irritated, as if I had refused him a graceful ending. I did love you. Past tense is the most honest thing you've said. I walked away before he could answer. Texas law generally required a 30-day wait after divorce before remarriage unless a judge waived it. Daniel and Megan waited 35. Invitations had already been ordered before our decree was signed. That detail reached me through Allison, an old high school friend who called while I was leaving a leadership meeting. "Please tell me the rumor isn't true," she said. "Megan is marrying Daniel next Saturday at Hawthorne Grove." Hawthorne Grove was a renovated estate south of Dallas, known for whitestone terraces, live oaks, and wedding packages priced like small cars. Megan had once sent me photographs of it and joked that in her next life she wanted a wedding there. "It's true," I said. "She invited people from school. Some thought the marriage was already over before they got together." I corrected them. "You didn't need to." "Yes, I did." After the call, I opened the photograph Lucas had sent of his business card and dialed the shop. He answered from the office. "Megan is getting married next Saturday," I said. "She is still pregnant, and Daniel still believes the baby is his." Lucas did not speak for several seconds. "She told me the baby died so she could marry the accountant. That appears to be what happened. I want to stop the wedding." "You want the truth to be acknowledged. Those are not always the same thing. If she signs a marriage license and lets him claim my child, your attorney should guide you. Do not trespass. Do not threaten anyone. And do not make a claim you cannot prove. Say you may be the father and show why." Lucas's lawyer had already drafted a notice preserving his intent to seek adjudication of parentage after the birth. The attorney advised against turning a wedding into a spectacle, but Lucas insisted that allowing Megan to enter another marriage without disclosing the paternity doubt would extend the fraud. He asked whether I would come. I hesitated. I had protected my assets. My divorce was final. I could walk away and let the three of them destroy each other without me. Yet I imagined Lucas learning about the birth months later. I imagined Daniel signing documents because hope had made him willfully blind. Most of all, I imagined Megan rewriting the affair until I became a bitter former friend who could not bear another woman's happiness. "I won't help you force your way inside," I said. "But if you enter lawfully and tell the truth, I will confirm what I know." Priya disliked the idea. "Your legal position is secure," she told me. "Public confrontation can create unpredictable risk. You cannot control Lucas, Megan, Daniel, or their relatives." "I know." "Then why attend?" "Because I spent 7 years thinking silence was the price of keeping a marriage. I won't let them use my silence to certify a lie." Priya studied me, then gave practical instructions. "Stay in a public area. Bring no private medical records. Do not touch anyone. Leave if security asks. Tell only what I personally witnessed." She made me promise to call if anything went wrong. The morning of the wedding, I chose a cream dress with a structured jacket, not the dark armor I first reached for. I did not want to look like a widow attending a funeral for her own life. I wanted to look like the woman who had survived it. Hawthorne Grove glowed under a bright October sky. White flowers framed the stone entrance. Valets moved luxury cars along the circular drive. Through tall windows, I saw guests holding champagne beneath crystal fixtures while a string quartet played near the terrace. I stayed in the covered corridor outside the main hall. Allison had placed my name on the guest list without telling Megan, but I had no intention of taking a seat. From where I stood, I could see Daniel at the front in a charcoal suit, smiling with the stunned pride of a man who believed fate had corrected an old injustice. Megan wore an ivory gown with a draped waist designed to soften the shape of her pregnancy. She looked beautiful. That was part of what made the scene so terrible. Lies did not always look ugly from a distance. The officiant asked the guests to stand. Megan began walking down the aisle on her father's arm. Daniel's face changed when he saw her. For a moment, I remembered the way he had looked at me on our wedding day, and grief slipped under my ribs before I could stop it. Then the doors at the rear opened. Lucas stepped inside carrying a slim document folder and a copy of the ultrasound held flat at his side. He did not shout immediately. He waited until the music faltered and every face turned toward him. "Before you marry him," he said to Megan, "tell everyone why you buried my baby while the baby was still alive." The sentence traveled through the hall like a crack in glass. Guests who had been smiling lowered their phones. Megan stopped halfway down the aisle. Her father's arm stiffened beneath her hand. Daniel looked first at Lucas, then at Megan's stomach, as if the answer might be visible through the fabric. "Who are you?" Daniel's father demanded from the front row. Lucas walked only far enough to clear the doorway. His lawyer had told him not to approach Megan, and he kept several rows of chairs between them. "I'm the man who lived with her for almost 8 months, he said. "The man she told was the father of that baby. The man she told 6 weeks ago that the baby had died." A murmur rolled across the room. Megan released her father and gripped her bouquet with both hands. "He's lying," she said. "I barely know him." Lucas's jaw tightened. "You have a key to my house." "He became obsessed with me after I met him at his shop," she told Daniel. "I didn't want to upset you while I was pregnant." Daniel stepped down from the small platform. "Megan, what is he talking about?" "Nothing. He's trying to ruin this." Lucas opened the folder. He did not wave anything toward the guests. He handed a stack of copies to the venue manager, who had moved cautiously into the aisle, and asked that Daniel receive them. The manager looked unsure until Daniel extended his hand. The first photographs showed Lucas and Megan with his family at a 4th of July cookout. Another showed them decorating a Christmas tree 7 months earlier. There were joint travel reservations, grocery deliveries to her apartment paid from his account, and messages in which she called him the father our baby deserves. The dates overlapped with Daniel's affair. Megan's mother sat down hard in her chair. "Pictures can be misunderstood," Megan said. "I ended it before Daniel and I became serious." "Then explain the voicemail," Lucas replied. He placed his phone on the small table near the entrance and played the recording through the hall's audio system only after the venue technician, responding to Daniel's command, connected it. Megan's voice filled the room, gentle and intimate. "The doctor says conception probably happened during our weekend in Austin. I'm scared to say it out loud yet, but I think we're going to be parents. Please don't tell your mother until I'm ready." There was no mistaking her voice. The date appeared on the phone screen. Daniel had been in Denver that weekend, a fact his parents knew because he had missed his mother's birthday dinner. Linda Hayes pressed a hand to her chest. "You told us you hadn't been with anyone since your divorce." Megan's expression shifted rapidly from fear to calculation. "Doctors estimate dates. They can be wrong by weeks." "Then why tell him the baby died?" Daniel asked. "Because he wouldn't leave me alone." "You said you barely knew him." The contradiction silenced her. The officiant quietly closed his folder. The string quartet had stopped playing. Behind me, one of Daniel's co-workers whispered to another. I could see the scandal Daniel had tried so hard to avoid spreading from face to face, not because I had announced his affair, but because his choices had gathered everyone he wanted to impress in a single room. Megan's eyes found me in the corridor. Her face changed completely. "You," she said. Every head turned. She walked toward me until her father caught her elbow. "You organized this because you can't stand that Daniel is having a child with me." I stepped into the hall. My hands were cold, but my voice was steady. "I didn't create your relationships. I didn't write your messages or record your voice. I told a possible father that the child you said was dead was still alive. You're jealous." "Of what?" "A wedding built around a paternity question neither of you had the courage to ask." Daniel looked at me as if I had struck him. "You knew?" "I learned the morning after I found the ultrasound." Lucas opened Megan's apartment door wearing clothes he kept there. He showed me his copy of the scan. And you let me go through the divorce believing the baby was mine? The outrage in his voice drew an astonished laugh from someone in the back. You went through the divorce because you were sleeping with my best friend, I said. You chose another life before asking whether any part of it was true. You used this to take the house. Priya's warnings echoed in my mind. State facts. Do not exaggerate. We divided community property through mediation. You had counsel. You signed because you wanted speed, privacy, and permission to begin this wedding as soon as Texas law allowed. The identity of the baby's father did not change the assets we built during our marriage. His lawyer, seated near the aisle, lowered his gaze. Daniel knew I was right. You should have told me. You should have told me before you slept with her. You should have told me when she became pregnant. You should have asked for a test before you called her child our miracle. I am no longer responsible for protecting you from the consequences of questions you refused to ask. Daniel's shoulders dropped. For 7 years, he had told me our marriage was bigger than parenthood. The moment another woman offered him a child, he treated me like an administrative delay. Now he wanted the wife he discarded to have performed quality control on his betrayal. Megan pulled away from her father. Even if Lucas is the biological father, Daniel can still raise the baby, she said. You told me you wanted to be a dad more than anything. Daniel stared at her. You wanted my name and my salary. I chose you because I love you. You told him his baby was dead because his family sells meat and I work for an accounting firm. Lucas's face hardened, but he stayed by the door. Don't act innocent, Megan snapped. You cheated on Claire. You lied to her for months. You said you were trapped in a dead marriage and that she cared more about her career than you. The second revelation moved through the room differently. Until that moment, Daniel had been able to stand as a deceived groom. Megan's words returned him to his actual role. His mother looked at him with a disappointment so complete that he could not meet her eyes. I never said it was dead, he muttered. Megan gave a sharp, humorless laugh. You said she had become cold after the miscarriages. You said I made you feel alive. I felt the words land, but they no longer entered the same wound. Daniel had used my grief to flatter his affair. The cruelty was real. So was the strange freedom of hearing it after his power over my future had ended. The venue manager asked whether the ceremony should continue. The officiant said he would not proceed while the parties were in active dispute about material facts and consent. No law required him to make that choice, but no one challenged it. Daniel tore the boutonniere from his lapel. Megan began crying. Her father guided her toward a side room while her mother followed at a distance. Guests started leaving in clusters. Some avoided looking at me. Others squeezed my arm or whispered apologies for believing the softened version of the timeline. Allison stood beside me like a guard. Do you want to stay? She asked. I looked at Daniel and Megan accusing each other beneath an arch of white roses that had probably cost more than my first car. No, I said. There's nothing here that belongs to me. Outside, the air smelled of clipped grass and rain approaching from the west. I expected elation. Instead, a deep calm settled through me. The wedding collapse was dramatic, but it was not my revenge. My real victory had happened in quiet rooms, when I protected our accounts without stealing, when I negotiated a fair settlement, when I stopped asking Daniel to choose me, and when I told Lucas enough truth to prevent Megan from erasing a living child. Lucas came outside several minutes later. My lawyer will handle the rest, he said. I won't contact her directly. Good. He looked back toward the hall. I thought I wanted everyone to watch her suffer. Now I just want to know whether that baby is mine. Then stay focused on the child, not the humiliation. You sound like my mother. She is probably right often. For the first time, he almost smiled. The story did not end at the wedding. Public scenes rarely settle private damage, they only make denial harder. Megan moved out of her apartment within 2 weeks. Through counsel, she refused Lucas's request for voluntary testing during pregnancy and said she would address paternity after delivery. She and Daniel did not reschedule the ceremony. For a short time, they remained together in his uptown apartment, bound less by trust than by the need to prove the spectacle had not defeated them. Daniel called me once from an unfamiliar number. You could have stopped him from doing that in front of everyone. So could Megan. She could have told you the truth before the wedding. My parents won't speak to me. That is between you and your parents. My firm heard about it. I did not contact your firm. I know. People from work were there. For the first time in our conversation, I heard fear rather than anger. Daniel, I am not your crisis manager anymore. I ended the call and blocked the number. Wexler and Pierce did not investigate Daniel for adultery. Firms do not usually police private morality unless it affects work. What triggered the review was a partner's discovery that Daniel had used client intake resources to research a tax issue for Megan and had asked a junior employee to run a background check through a subscription restricted to business purposes. He had also billed part of a trip to Frisco as client development when the meeting was personal. Those were not enormous thefts, but they revealed judgment problems in a profession built on trust. Daniel lost the promotion he had expected. He was removed from 2 sensitive accounts and placed under supervision. Several partners who once invited him to golf stopped returning personal calls. The reputation he tried to preserve with a confidential divorce was damaged by conduct he had chosen long before the wedding. When I learned this through industry contacts, I felt no urge to celebrate. Accountability had arrived through the proper door. I had not needed to push it. Megan gave birth to a healthy girl in early spring. Lucas's attorney filed the parentage action. The court ordered genetic testing after the necessary procedures and notice. For several weeks, all 3 adults waited on a result that would define legal responsibilities but could not repair what had already happened. Lucas called me the morning his attorney received the report. She's mine, he said. His voice broke on the last word. I sat at my kitchen table, looking at sunlight on the floor where the ultrasound had once landed. How are you feeling? Happy. Furious. Terrified. All of it. What will you do? Ask for a parenting plan. Pay support. Be her father. I'm not going back to Megan. Those are separate choices. That's healthy. My mother already bought enough clothes for 3 babies. This time, I laughed. The result was the final paternity turn. Daniel had traded our marriage for a child who was not his. But I refused to describe the baby as punishment or proof that the universe favored one adult over another. She was innocent. She deserved a father who wanted to know her, a mother who learned to stop using love as currency, and a life not defined by the scandal that preceded her birth. Daniel learned the result the same day. He called from another number that evening. She wasn't mine, he said. I could hear that he had been crying. I know. I lost everything for a lie. No. You lost our marriage because you chose to betray it. Megan's lie explains why your imagined reward disappeared. It does not explain your choices. We could start over. The audacity might once have made me furious. Instead, it made the final truth simple. Why are you calling now? Because I understand what I did. If the test had named you, would you be calling? He did not answer. That silence is the answer, I said. You don't miss me. You miss the life you discarded after the replacement failed to perform as promised. Claire, I made a mistake. A mistake is sending an email to the wrong address. You scheduled lunches, deleted messages, lied about meetings, hid an ultrasound, rushed a divorce, and planned a wedding. Those were hundreds of decisions. I was grieving too. Pain can explain why a door looked tempting. It does not explain why you kept walking through it while holding my hand. He began to say my name again. I hope you become better, I told him. but I will never again be the place where you practice. I ended the call. Megan posted a long statement online 3 days later. She described herself as a vulnerable pregnant woman whose wedding had been destroyed by a jealous former friend and an unstable ex-boyfriend. She did not mention the overlapping relationships, the false miscarriage, or the voice message. Several people sent me screenshots and urged me to respond. I drafted 6 versions. In each, I corrected every lie and attached evidence. Then I remembered how much of my life had already been spent inside Megan's story. I deleted the drafts. Lucas's lawyer submitted the necessary messages in court. Daniel's own admissions existed in divorce filings. People who needed facts could find them. I did not need to win a public argument with someone whose survival strategy depended on changing the audience faster than the truth could follow. My house felt different after that. I repainted Daniel's office and replaced the desk. The upstairs room that had once been a nursery plan and then a shared office became a reading room with wide shelves and a soft chair beside the window. I did not fill it to prove I was busy. I left empty space because emptiness no longer frightened me. I traveled alone for the first time, taking a train through the Pacific Northwest and spending 3 days on the Oregon coast. At dinner in Cannon Beach, a server asked whether someone would be joining me. I almost said yes from habit. Then I looked at the single-place setting and realized I did not feel abandoned. I felt present. Therapy forced me to examine more than the affair. For years, I had measured my worth against motherhood, even while telling other women their lives did not need anyone's approval. Every failed treatment had become evidence in a private trial against my body. Daniel's betrayal had exploited that wound, but he had not created it alone. Family questions, advertisements, clinic language, and my own expectations had all taught me to call myself incomplete. Dr. Foster asked me to name what my body had done besides fail. At first I resented the exercise. Then I wrote, carried me through 42 years, recovered from surgery, held my father when he came home from the hospital, worked long days, climbed trails, survived grief, warned me when something was wrong, and kept breathing on nights I wished sleep could erase me. I stopped calling my scars proof of defeat. At work, our company began discussing a returnship program for women and caregivers re-entering the workforce after long absences. The initial proposal was cautious, designed more for public relations than hiring. I challenged it in the executive meeting. If we invite people back only to offer temporary roles with no path forward, we are borrowing their stories for our brand, I said. Build real training, mentorship, and conversion targets, or don't pretend. The chief operating officer asked me to redesign the program. I assembled managers, benefits specialists, and technical trainers. We created paid 6-month placements with clear performance standards and permanent openings attached. Applicants included women returning after divorce, illness, military caregiving, elder care, and years spent raising children. During the first interview cycle, a 45-year-old woman named Denise sat across from me twisting the strap of her portfolio. She had spent 12 years outside formal employment caring for her mother and then navigating a difficult divorce. Her resume ended abruptly, but her answers showed discipline, systems thinking, and a kind of calm that cannot be taught in a seminar. I'm afraid I waited too long, she admitted. Everyone else seems to have kept moving. I thought about the hotel stationery, the empty hangars, the courthouse elevator, and the aisle of white roses. As long as you are still here, I said, you can begin again. The words settled between us, and I realized I was speaking to myself too. Denise joined the program and later earned a permanent role in supply chain analytics. She was only one of many, but watching her confidence return taught me something revenge never could. Pain becomes smaller when it is transformed into a door someone else can walk through. My parents worried I would never trust again. I told them trust was not the lesson I had lost. I would trust differently. I would notice when consistency disappeared. I would never again confuse sacrifice with proof of love. But I would not let Daniel and Megan turn suspicion into my permanent address. Lucas sent occasional updates about his daughter through a private account. He kept them brief and respectful. A photograph of her tiny hand wrapped around his finger made me cry, but not from envy. I cried because she had entered the world surrounded by adults' lies and still looked entirely new. He and Megan struggled through custody negotiations, yet he kept his promise to separate fatherhood from romance. I hoped Megan would eventually do the same. I do not know whether Daniel learned to live without treating desire as entitlement. I heard he left Wexler and Pierce about a year later for a smaller firm in another city. I do not monitor him. Justice would become another prison if I needed daily proof that he was unhappy. The ultrasound that began everything remained with legal documents after the proceedings. I never asked for it back. The image did not belong to Daniel's fantasy, Megan's strategy, or my revenge. It belonged to a child who deserved to grow up without carrying the ambitions of the adults around her. On the second anniversary of my divorce, I walked around White Rock Lake before sunrise. The Dallas skyline was still gray in the distance, and pelicans moved across the water in a line so smooth it barely left a wake. I passed the hotel where I had spent the first night after discovering the affair. I remembered the woman inside that room writing "protect" on a piece of stationery because she did not yet understand how much of herself was still intact. For 7 years, I believed my story had a missing chapter because I could not have a child. Daniel's betrayal exposed a harsher truth. The thing that had been incomplete was a marriage whose promises depended on what my body could provide. My life was never a waiting room. I had treated it like one because I expected motherhood, Daniel, or someone else's choice to call my name. The sun rose behind me as I reached the spillway. I stopped and watched the light turn the water silver. There was no dramatic witness, no final confrontation, no audience to applaud. Just my breath, my scars, and a future that no longer required permission. For the first time in many years, I was not waiting for someone to choose me. I had chosen myself.